Okay, so we're back. I'm going to bring you up to speed today with our videography series here. Essentially, just to recap, my name is Al Matson, and I'm got some things I'd like to share with people, different things that I've done and tried, and what the results have been. So, in an effort to do that, I started a YouTube channel. My problem is that I got about 15-20 tapes in the can, various things, and I've got music running in the background because that's the way I live. And come to find out, that's not the way it's done. So I've got the music off now, and I'm going to go ahead and try to resume this video where we left off and see what I can do about dubbing in the other one. This might get a little disjointed, but what we're attempting to do, what we're doing here is, well, the attempting part is that I'm going to try a new method of turning case necks. I've been turning case necks using a bunch of different conventional methods for a number of years. And here a while back, a guy named Jackie Schmidt showed a method of turning case necks on the lathe that I thought was inspired. At first I didn't understand it. I thought he had built some kind of a bracket or a jig, or none of this matters. My lack of understanding needn't affect the rest of the world. Suffice it to say, I misunderstood. Once I looked more closely at the video that he had posted, I went, oh, wait a minute. That is pretty stinking cool. So I'm going to try it for the first time. I'm going to do my prep steps up to the neck turning process, which is where we are right now. When I left off the last video, and the reason that I feel comfortable doing this in this way, left off at the last video, etc., is that I'm filming in 20-minute time blocks, 5, 10, 15, 20. And because of the fact that it's not that I'm lazy, it's that I honestly do not have time to do the video editing thing. I have YouTubers for friends. I have kids that put together beautiful movies of a trip to somewhere or a wedding ceremony or whatever, and they play like Hollywood, and they're cool, and there's overlays and cuts and fades, and the thing is, that's a job, that's a hobby in itself. I'm simply trying to document some methods. So it's going to be disjointed, it's going to be, all I can say is if you don't like straggling through Al's vomitus, fast forward or go somewhere else. I don't know a good way to do this. I'm going to kind of just edit as I go. I noticed in the first video that I published recently, I published a just setting up my lighting and sound to start this thing. And I personally myself counted 6 misstatements where I had said things. I called a chuck on the lathe a vice, for instance. So misspeaking is something I want to do. This is all extemporaneous. I'm just blowing and going here. Turn on the camera, start talking, start doing something, try to fill the silence, try to get enough done that it captures your interest. If it doesn't, that's really not my concern either. I'm just putting it down there so that those who are interested enough might learn from it. And if nobody ever cares or is interested enough, again, it's for me, it's for us, it's for myself, it's for whatever. It's just showing what I do. I've spent time on an internet forum for a number of years. A lot of arguments happen. This way, if an argument pops up, I can say, hey, go look at what I did here and see what you think. Or not. I don't care. So, where we had left off before was that we had carefully stepped these necks. Let me see if I can get them in the camera. Here I might as well just say one of the reasons I've had the music soundtrack running is because I'm self-filming. To do this correctly, you need somebody to run the camera, and then they can do the focusing and the manual and the cool shots and the pullbacks and all this kind of stuff without this annoying noise. This camera motor is running constantly, following my hands, trying to decide what, I'm looking at a monitor here, trying to get the thing to focus where I want it to focus, trying to move back and forth and in and out of, trying to get the light on the things. What I'm trying to do here is show you the steps in this case neck. And you're going to have to live with the tickety tick 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 of that camera because I am not going to hire somebody, and I'm certainly not going to impose on anyone else's time to come out here and do this for me, because this is a very limited application. Maybe 9 people on God's green earth are ever going to care enough to watch what I'm doing. But what I've done is, I say I've developed because I was one of the very first ones to do this. This brass is from the first boatload of 6.5 by 47 brass that came across from Finland. This is a case I was excited about for a long time. Before it came out, I begged Namo, I begged Caltron Pettibone, I begged the people whose names that I knew to please, could you jerk a bunch of, didn't care, 243, 308, 708, whatever, mid-sized case off the production line down at Lapua and send them. I'll buy 1,000, 10,000, whatever it takes. I'll drill my own flash holes. But I want a mid-sized case, small flash hole, small primer pocket, because I want to ramp the pressure up to in the excess of 70,000 psi, because that's where the performance is to be found. And for all of you that want to dispute that, I don't care. I'll meet you to match someday. That's like racers walking around saying, well, you know, turbos are cool and everything, but they're not really, they don't increase efficiency, so I would never put a turbo, or a blower. What are you talking about? Cramming air into the motor, a root style blower takes 100 horses to run it. How can it produce? This is ignorance speaking. The simple fact is that if you go to a race, you're going to see spools and you're going to see all sorts of forced induction because it works. Well, this is kind of the same thing. This is kind of a well-developed cartridge now. There's quite a few iterations of it. Sammy may well have adapted it, I don't know, or put a set of specs to it. This one has no specs. But one of the problems with this is when necking down the 6.5 case to 6 millimeter, see if I can get this thing to focus, I'm working on it here, you end up getting a step in the neck. No, you don't. In the last video I explained, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing this, trying to get a focus on the step of the neck, and typically my voice, my mouth just vomited out what was crossing the forefront of my front brain. The problem with necking these down to the conventional die is that the neck goes off center. So in an attempt, successful attempt by the way, we found success in necking down with a step in the neck. Now I'm going to set up the die to do the final step, which is to take this stepped portion of the neck and shove it back to form the head spacing shoulder. I won't say shove it back to the shoulder because I'm not shoving it back to the original shoulder. This shoulder would probably fall in the gun, slap bam. Don't know, I've never even checked it, but I'm going to form a head spacing shoulder. And we do that by changing out the bushing die in this Neil Jones die. I think I've already changed it out, and I put myself a nice gap here. So now the next thing is, I was going to do this in production mode and show you how we take this homemade rack here and hose it down with the spray lube, toot, and then go baggity, and set all these quick. Trust me, anybody who's ever reloaded more than 3 rounds knows perfectly well that there are ways to make this into a production line. Right now, it's not a production line because I'm videotaping. I'm showing you what I'm doing. So I'm going to take this little rack of cases, and unfortunately I had a whole bunch more I was going to do here because this is not enough cases to even take to a match. So my own project is all screwed up because now I'm going to have to go back and reset the die and set up a bunch more but anyway, for the sake of the video, we're here. I've changed out the bushing, I believe. This is the Neil Jones bushing with I believe this has a step in it. Maybe not. Let me stick it. Well, now I'm really being silly here because I've been gone for a few days. And I come back and I thought I was set up and ready to go, but I see here a 262 bushing. I see here a 264. Neither of these has a step in them when I look into them. Ah, this one has a step. So here we go. This one is stepped 286 to 265. So these have already been stepped using this bushing, and this is weird. This is the way I've got this camera angle set up. I wonder how much of the time my hands are completely out of the camera. Sorry about that. So there's that. We're going to go ahead and stick one of these in here. Take my high dollar press here. Bam! Shove the shoulder back a little further. So that is the technique. This shoulder is back now. Again, I don't know that I can get it in the camera, but I will do an attempt. I have lensing, I have stuff. I can do all these close-ups and whatever. I just don't know that I ever will. So kind of what you get's what you get. Hopefully we can roll this around. That was what I did. So now I'm going to go ahead and move the camera. We're going to pan around a little bit. I'll just shut it off, get it set up on the trolley, on the cart, so that I can move it. I just wanted to set up here to show you some of the steps. This was an incompleted drawing here. Basically what I was going to explain, and I can explain it now with this case laying here, it had the step about halfway down the neck. Now I've pushed it back further just to make sure that my system is working. And where I was going to go with this is that it could be that doing this neck in several steps could produce work hardened sections. It could produce a certain amount of, I could picture it being a little something like that. I'll check that with pin gauges when I get there, and I'll find out if doing this thing in several steps has got any deleterious effects. But I have got hundreds of cases made this way that have been very successful, lasted a long time. I honestly think that if I neck down to here, and then I would never do this intermediate, but then neck down to where I could make my little head spacing shoulder. This, of course, being the neck of the case itself, the case actual. This is the head spacing shoulder that we talked about in the last video. And I think that this will be straight enough, especially when I run it up onto a mandrel, because the proposal I have for this mandrel is that this fellow on the internet that showed a video of this throws a piece of stock in the lathe, turns himself a mandrel to a given size, then he forces the cases onto that mandrel using the tailstock of the lathe, and then with them sitting on the manual, there's no lube on this or anything, as I understand it. I'll try different things, but I think it just jams it up on here, probably runs it up against a stop. We'll play with, we'll find out all this. You'll be here when we find out what that works like. We're going to run these up onto a homemade mandrel. We're going to turn the outside off, and I would like to believe that any little imperfections that were in this neck from our multiple step neck sizing process will be ironed out and gone. If they're not, they'll shoot out. But I really think the guy who did it, the guy who showed this, is an accomplished shooter on a level that I can only aspire to. Probably be dead before I reach that. He shoots well, he shoots a lot, he's been shooting for a while. And I mean, he videotaped this sequence 10 years ago or something, and has been, anyway, let's not go there. I'm not here to compare the abilities of different people, different shooters. Suffice it to say that he has a reputation in the community such that I trust that the information that he presented was accurate. That's the only reason I went on this big digression. It's not just some hacker like myself. This is an established member of the bench rest shooting community that used this method, and at first I simply didn't appreciate it. Now I'm going to try it for the first time. That's why we're making these cases. This case is going to go back in my box. It's going to go upside down because that one's different. And we're going to move the camera. I'll show you some of my old neck turning stuff. Maybe I can do that right now. I'm going to try to take this camera down. Ooh, this could get really ugly because cords, I'm not wireless, I'm hooked to a monitor. Whoa, I got targets coming down off the wall here. It's crowded in here. So I'm going to come around with the camera. I can get a shot from right here of some of my neck turning apparatus that I've been using for, I just don't know if any of that's going to, the camera's going to find it or not. That's it, there it comes, see, look at that. This has been used successfully for years. Those of you with sharp eyes and an astute grasp of the neck turning techniques will recognize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different neck turners and mandrels and assemblies. My driver has been a $49.99 Chinese lathe laid on its side, geared down to spin at something that I can use. You'll notice that there are files and cutting tools and trimming, and I've made a lot of really good cases at this little station right here. And perhaps if this new method works out, I'll never do it again. So I'm going to head on over and reset the camera and try to show how we set this headspace, and I'm going to give you a visual of a term that I call healing the bolt closed. How to set the headspace such that you have to heal the bolt closed for proper sizing. And when I say proper sizing, I misspeak more than I can believe sometimes. For proper fireforming. There's been a myth floated in the shooting community for 50 years, or at least as long as I've been around it, that the way you get cases to form out well is to seat the bullets long, jam the bullets into the rifling, and that will hold it from, take it from there. Believe me, I tested it. I tested it with everything from silver solder to epoxy to 13 thousandths of neck tension to blunt bullets to VLDs to bench rest to stinking 5 ogive. We should talk about ogive sometime too, so that you know why a 5 is called a 5, or a 7 is called a 7, or a 15 is called a 15 ogive. Maybe I'll draw some more pictures. Suffice it to say that a 5 ogive is very blunt, and it will jam into those riflings, and then when you drop that brick on it, when you pull the trigger and drop the firing pin, it promptly slides back into the case. So I've tried tension, I said silver solder earlier. That's a bit of hyperbole. I use hyperbole a lot because it's the kind of guy I am. So what I'm saying is I tried everything useful, reasonable. I tried Roy's primer pocket sealant, I tried nail polish, I tried epoxy, I tried super glue. I tried many different things to try to get a bullet to lock into the case, and I tried many different ogives to try to get a bullet to lock against the rifling lands. And let me just say that my testing shows that the entire idea of holding a case back against the bolt face using a bullet, I'll just keep it really simple, doesn't work. I won't say it's stupid because it's an attempt. I will say it's ignorant. And the difference between ignorance and stupidity is that ignorance is curable. That's what these videos are about. And if someday somebody hops up on his hind feet and starts yapping at me that he doesn't believe it, I will make a freaking video, people, and I will show you that bullets will not, cannot, ever, in this physical universe, hold cases back against the bolt face for proper fire forming. So, rant over. Let's move forward and make some cases.